Imagine reading a headline that a major global trade route is, officially open for business. The treaties are signed, politicians are shaking hands, but out on the water, 300 fully loaded cargo ships are sitting perfectly still, just completely paralyzed.
Right, just burning fuel and going nowhere.
Exactly. Welcome to the Claire and Horatio Daily World Brief, available at claireandhoratio.com. I mean, we're so accustomed to measuring the end of a conflict by the stroke of a pen, right? We expect the price at the pump to drop overnight.
But that friction between paper agreements and physical reality is playing out right now in the Gulf, where this newly emerging memorandum of understanding between the U.S. and Iran is aiming to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. And today, we're synthesizing those military negotiations, along with the civic impact of America's first trillionaire dismantling foreign aid.
Plus, we need to look at Europe's struggling defense sector and a really profound story of human resilience emerging from the Democratic Republic of Congo. So starting with the Gulf, this is easily the most impactful news today. The U.S. and Iran have a framework extending the ceasefire and lifting the U.S. naval blockade of Iranian ports. And in Tehran, leaders are working overtime to sell this. You have Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf calling it a long step towards final victory, trying to appease these angry hardliners.
Well, the domestic messaging there is really just a matter of political survival, because the underlying reality is that the Iranian economy is what actually forced Tehran's hand. The sanctions and shipping restrictions severely reduce their access to oil markets and hard currency.
Right, they just don't have the internationally accepted dollars and euros for essential imports, which caused that crippling inflation. And Vice President J.D. Vance said Iran won't get direct U.S. taxpayer money, but they could get billions in sanctions relief.
Which is the exact mechanism Tehran needs to present this deal as, a victory for national reconstruction. And concurrently, G7 leaders, including host Emmanuel Macron and guest Volodymyr Zelensky, are trying to leverage this. Donald Trump just stated that sanctions on Russia can actually be reinstated as more oil starts moving through Hormuz.
Okay, let's unpack this, because if the ink isn't even dry and the water is literally still mined, isn't the political victory lap incredibly premature? I mean, declaring a strait open for business on paper doesn't magically remove high explosives from the water.
No, it absolutely does not.
So how long until ordinary people actually feel relief at the grocery store or see their energy costs go down?
It's going to be excruciatingly slow. Maritime logistics dictate that the naval mines Iran deployed have to be physically located and cleared. And this isn't a simple sweep. You need specialized minesweepers, underwater sonar drones to map the seafloor, and ordnance disposal teams.
Wow, just to neutralize the acoustic and contact mines. That sounds like it takes a massive amount of time.
It does. International observers then have to verify the safety. That specific clearance process alone could take 40 to 50 days. And beyond the physical danger, the financial architecture is totally paralyzed. War risk insurance premiums for entering the Gulf are sitting between 1% and 4% of a vessel's total value.
Wait, let's do the math on that premium. For a standard $200 million oil tanker, a 4% premium means adding $8 million to the cost of a single transit. Before all this, that same insurance costs less than $200,000.
Exactly. Those $8 million premiums are prohibitive. So until the actuaries in London see verifiable proof that the water is clear, premiums won't drop. Those 300 fully loaded vessels anchored in the Gulf, plus the 250 empty ones waiting, they're simply not moving.
So the supply chain is still entirely bottlenecked by physical and financial risk. Consumers aren't going to see an immediate drop in energy costs anytime soon. And, the shifting priorities in the Gulf are inextricably linked to a totally new era of governance in Washington.
Yeah, we're watching unprecedented private wealth directly override traditional state functions.
Right, because Elon Musk has officially crossed the threshold to become the world's first trillionaire. And just to comprehend $1 trillion, 12 zeros, if a person works 70 hours a week from age 20 to 75 with 0 holidays, they'd need to earn roughly $5 million every single hour.
It's almost unimaginable.
And following his massive funding of the 2024 campaign, Musk now runs the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. But this isn't just a business story, it's a global governance story.
The civic stakes of that wealth concentration are severe. Operating through DOGE, Musk recently dismantled USAID. And this terminates numerous humanitarian programs globally. It's not just food delivery, it's the cold chain logistics for vaccines in remote areas and famine early warning systems.
And the human cost of that is staggering. A new Lancet study estimates that closing U.S. aid could result in more than 14 million deaths by 2030, including 4.5 million children under 5. But what is the actual legal mechanism here? Do those agencies not operate on congressionally appropriated funds?
They do, but DOGE operates by leveraging executive branch restructuring authority. They basically freeze the disbursement of funds at the agency level, halting contracts and defunding the administrative overhead. So extreme private wealth is using executive loopholes to dictate life and death global policy.
And what's wild is how this privatization of foreign policy is sparking intense legal battles. Musk is currently threatening legal action against the German public broadcaster ZDF over their coverage of his tweets regarding the Belfast riots.
What's fascinating here is that we're seeing this oligarchic overreach across multiple fronts.
Yeah, we're seeing another facet of this billionaire land grab in the Balkans. Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump are pushing a luxury resort project on Albania's Sazan Island. It's a former Cold War military base, so it was left isolated and became this protected marine biodiversity reserve.
Right, a highly sensitive ecological zone.
And Ivanka recently gave this tone-deaf interview talking about hiking barefoot and discovering the island. Those comments sparked what locals are calling the Flamingo Revolution. Up to 200,000 Albanians protesting the privatization of a national park.
And the mechanism behind that transfer is exactly what's driving the protests. To build the resort, the Albanian government bypassed standard environmental impact assessments to alter the island's protected status. The country's anti-corruption agency has actually opened a formal investigation into that loophole.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We used to worry about billionaires quietly lobbying politicians. Now we're watching private citizens unilaterally defund global humanitarian networks and appropriate foreign national parks. Are nation-states losing their sovereignty to trillionaires?
It certainly forces us to ask that question, considering these individuals hold more financial resources than the GDP of the countries they're negotiating with.
The scale of civic vulnerability is just totally unprecedented. By the way, for more daily briefings, brain candy explainers, and classic audiobooks, visit clarineratio.com. But moving on, with U.S. foreign aid vanishing, Europe is really being forced to reckon with its own vulnerabilities, right?
Yes, both civic and military. We are looking at the collapse of Europe's most ambitious defense project, the Future Combat Air System, or FCAS. France and Germany have essentially abandoned this €100 billion initiative to build a sixth-generation fighter jet.
And a sixth-generation fighter isn't just a plane. It's basically a flying command center for automated drones. But the project completely fell apart over corporate squabbling, right? The French aerospace group, Dassault and Airbus, just couldn't resolve their intellectual property disputes.
Exactly. Dassault refused to share crucial flight control data, while Airbus refused to surrender leadership over the cloud-based avionics. Meanwhile, Germany is pushing ahead unilaterally on ground defense, with Rheinmetall aggressively marketing its Panther tank to Italy.
Which directly undermines the Franco-German joint tank project. So what does this all mean? We have a booming German defense budget of 108 billion euros for 2026, packed air shows in Berlin, and a demonstrably weaker collective defense. It sounds like corporate profit motives are actively overriding the civic safety of the continent.
They absolutely are. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, while military integration stalls, civic democracy is actually showing real teeth elsewhere in Europe. In Hungary, Peter Magyar's new government just successfully passed a constitutional amendment limiting the prime minister to an 8-year term.
Which effectively blocks Viktor Orban's return, right? Since he led uninterrupted for 16 years.
Precisely. And furthermore, Magyar's government dismantled Orban's Sovereignty Protection Office. That office was supposed to defend against foreign interference, but it functioned as an agency to intimidate domestic political opponents and journalists.
But how does dismantling that single office directly translate to unlocking EU funding? Because Magyar just unlocked, what, 16.4 billion euros?
Under the EU's conditionality regulation, Brussels can withhold cohesion funds if rule of law breaches threaten the budget. Orban's intimidation tactics violated democratic benchmarks, freezing those billions. By executing targeted legal reforms, Magyar met the EU's stipulations and unlocked the funds.
It's a striking contrast. Corporate interests are stalling Western European security, but clear democratic mandates are rapidly dismantling authoritarian structures in Central Europe. And amidst all these massive geopolitical power struggles, the most profound stakes are playing out on the ground, in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Yes, in the Ituri province, where authorities are battling a deadly outbreak of the rare Bundibugyo species of Ebola.
And this strain is notoriously tough to track. It's killed roughly 1 in 5 known infected people, and it was likely spreading undetected for months before the World Health Organization officially declared the outbreak.
Because it circulated without formal contact tracing early on, medics are now fighting a highly toxic information ecosystem. Myths like the coffin curse have severely hampered containment. It started in February when a family was transporting a deceased relative. The coffin broke, the man was buried, and they burned the broken coffin.
So when subsequent deaths happened in the community, they blamed it on burning the coffin, completely obscuring the biological reality that Ebola transmits through direct contact with bodily fluids during traditional burial preparations.
Exactly. And that misinformation led to direct violence. A community misled to believe the clinics were the source of the illness actually burned an Ebola treatment tent at the Mongwalu Hospital in May.
But the human resilience pushing back against that is incredible. Look at 49-year-old Daniel Kitambala. He was discharged from that same clinic last Friday after 2 negative tests. He walked out carrying his sterilized belongings in a black bag, greeted by healthcare workers singing songs of praise.
And that kind of visible public recovery is serving as an undeniable counter-narrative to the coffin curse. The medical director noted a massive increase in people voluntarily seeking treatment after seeing survivors return to their communities.
It strikes me that healthcare workers here are fighting 2 simultaneous outbreaks, the biological pathogen and the viral spread of misinformation. And the cure for both requires building immense community trust.
Looking across the scope of today's briefing, we're really observing several distinct pressures. We're watching a global tug-of-war between highly centralized, unaccountable power, whether that's the corporate defense industry stalling European security or a tech trillionaire dismantling global aid, and the stubborn resistance of citizens on the ground.
You see that resistance everywhere. The 200,000 Albanians in the streets, the Hungarian parliament blocking authoritarianism, and the Congolese clinics where trust is being rebuilt through survival. If extreme wealth is now capable of bypassing democratic governments to dictate international humanitarian survival, at what point will global citizens demand that trillionaires be regulated under the same international laws that bind heads of state?
It's a crucial question for the years ahead.
Thank you for joining today's briefing. For more daily world briefs and to explore classic audiobooks, visit clarinhoratio.com.